The bridge of the Terran Federation flagship Indomitable Spirit was silent except for the soft hum of computers. Admiral Taeho Kim stood before the massive view screen, his weathered hands clasped behind his back. Before him stretched the void of space, dotted with the running lights of 200 human warships. They hung in perfect formation at the edge of the Vega system. Waiting beyond them, like a wall of metal and death, waited the Hegemony fleet. 2,000 alien warships filled the darkness, their hulls gleaming with strange lights and weapon arrays that could turn planets to ash. The sight would have terrified any sane person. Admiral Kim just smiled grimly. Captain So Min Park approached from the weapons station, her boots clicking on the metal deck. She was young for a ship captain, barely 30, but her eyes held the hardness of someone who had seen too much war. The Soul's Wrath, her dreadnought, was the second largest ship in the human fleet. Its weapons were charged and ready. "Admiral," she said quietly, "the Hegemony fleet is moving into attack formation. They're trying to surround us." Kim nodded without turning around. "Let them." "Commander Lee, what does our intelligence tell us about their battle plans?" Commander Jinwoo Lee looked up from his tactical display, pushing his glasses up his nose. He was the smartest man on the ship, maybe in the whole fleet. His job was to study alien technology and find ways to beat it. "Sir, they're using standard Hegemony doctrine, overwhelming force in a direct assault. They expect us to either surrender or try to run. And they have no idea what we're really planning," Kim said with satisfaction. The communication panel beeped. Lieutenant Hae Won-young turned from her station. "Sir, incoming transmission from the Hegemony flagship. They're demanding to speak with our commander." Kim straightened his uniform jacket. "Put them through." The view screen flickered and changed. The face that appeared was not human. The Hegemony commander was a Dominarch, one of the ruling caste of the alien empire. Its skin was scaled and green. Its eyes were yellow with vertical pupils like a snake. When it spoke, its voice was cold and arrogant. "I am Fleet Commander Vex Kral of the Galactic Hegemony. You will identify yourself human." "Admiral Taeho." "Kim, Terran Federation Navy," Kim replied calmly. The alien's eyes narrowed. "You have heard our ultimatum. Your species will surrender all colonies beyond your home system. You will accept tributary status under Hegemony rule. You will pay the tribute tax and provide soldiers for our armies. This is your last chance to avoid total destruction." Around the bridge, the human crew tensed. They had all heard the ultimatum before, but hearing it again made their anger burn hotter. The Hegemony wanted to turn humanity into slaves, nothing more. Kim's expression never changed. "We have considered your offer, Fleet Commander." "Good. Then you will surrender your ships and prepare for occupation forces." "No," Kim said simply. Alien blinked in confusion. "What did you say?" "I said no. The Terran Federation rejects your ultimatum completely. We will not surrender our colonies. We will not become your tributaries. We will not kneel to your empire." Vex Kral's face twisted with rage. "You dare refuse the Hegemony? We have conquered 40,000 worlds. We have destroyed civilizations older than your pathetic species. You are nothing but primitive apes who barely learned to leave your mudball planet." Kim smiled, and it was not a pleasant smile. "You're right about one thing, Commander. We are different from the species you've conquered before. We don't surrender. We don't kneel, and we don't run." "Then you will die," the alien snarled. "Maybe," Kim agreed. "But here's what you don't understand about humans. When we fight, we don't fight just to win. We fight to make sure our enemies remember the cost of threatening us. Even if we lose, even if we all die, we'll make you pay such a price that you'll never forget the name of humanity." The alien commander was staring now, clearly confused by Kim's words. In the Hegemony, species either submitted or were quickly crushed. No one talked about making them pay a price. Kim continued, his voice growing Harder. So let me make this clear. Fleet Commander Vex Kral of the Galactic Hegemony. The Terran Federation hereby declares total war against your empire. Not a border skirmish. Not a trade dispute. Total war. No quarter asked, none given. We will fight. You with everything we have, everywhere we can, until either you are defeated or we are all dead. The bridge was completely silent now. Even the computer humming seemed to stop. The alien's yellow eyes were wide with shock. You cannot be serious, Vex Kral said finally. No species has ever declared total war against the hegemony. It is suicide. Then we'll be the first, Kim replied. And maybe the last species you ever underestimate. Behind the alien commander, other hegemony officers were talking excitedly in their own language. Kim couldn't understand the words, but he could see the confusion and disbelief on their faces. They had never encountered anything like this before. You have sealed your fate, human, Vex Kral said, trying to regain his composure. We will crush your pitiful fleet and then reduce your worlds to ash. Your species will be remembered only as a warning to others who defy the hegemony. We'll see, Kim said calmly. But I'll give you one piece of free advice, Commander. You should have studied human history before you came here. You should have learned what happens when someone pushes us too far. What are you talking about? Kim's smile grew wider. We're really good at killing things that try to kill us, and we never, ever give up. The transmission cut off, leaving the human bridge in darkness except for the glow of instrument panels. For a long moment, no one spoke. Finally, Captain Park broke the silence. Well, Admiral, I guess we're committed now. Kim turned to face his crew. These were good people, brave people, who had volunteered to follow him into what might be the last battle humanity ever fought. They deserved to know the truth. Listen to me, all of you, he said, his voice carrying clearly through the bridge. That alien was right about one thing. They outnumber us 10 to 1. They have bigger ships, more advanced technology, and the resources of 40,000 worlds behind them. By any logical analysis, we should surrender or run. The crew waited, watching their admiral's face. But logic isn't what makes us human, Kim continued. What makes us human is that we'll fight impossible odds for things we believe in: freedom, dignity, the right to choose our own path among the stars. And if we have to die for those things, then we'll die in a way that makes our enemies wish they had never heard of Earth. He turned back to the view screen, where the hegemony fleet was beginning to move. All ships, this is Admiral Kim. Prepare for battle stations. Today we show the galaxy what humans are made of. The bridge erupted into controlled activity as the crew prepared for what might be the most important battle in human history. Outside, the enemy fleet advanced like a wave of death, confident in their overwhelming superiority. They had no idea what they were about to face. The hegemony fleet moved forward like a massive wave of metal and death. 2,000 alien warships advanced in perfect formation, their weapons charging with bright flashes of energy. Fleet Commander Vex Kral stood on his flagship bridge, watching the small human fleet with contempt. Begin the attack, he ordered. Standard bombardment pattern. Destroy them quickly. The first wave of hegemony ships opened fire. Brilliant beams of plasma energy crossed the void, lighting up space like deadly fireworks. The alien weapons were powerful enough to crack moons and turn asteroids to dust. They should have ended the battle in seconds, but the human ships were no longer where they had been. Admiral Kim watched from the indomitable spirit as his fleet scattered like leaves in a storm. The human ships moved in ways the aliens had never seen before. They twisted and spun, using their smaller size and better engines to dodge the incoming fire. Most of the plasma beams hit empty space. Phase 1 complete, reported Commander Lee from his tactical station. The enemy has committed to their attack formation. They cannot change course quickly. Kim nodded. The hegemony always fought the same way. They formed up their big ships in straight lines and hammered their enemies with overwhelming firepower. It worked against most species, but humans had studied their tactics for months. "Captain Park," Kim said into his communication device, "begin Phase 2. On the dreadnought Soul's Wrath, Captain So-Min Park smiled grimly. "All weapons, target the enemy flagship. Fire when ready." The human dreadnought turned toward the massive hegemony command ship. Hidden weapon ports opened along its hull, revealing something the aliens had never seen before. Instead of energy weapons, the humans had built kinetic railguns. These weapons fired solid metal rods using magnetic acceleration, the tungsten rod that shot out from Soul's Wrath was only 3 meters long, but it was moving at 15% of light speed. When it hit the hegemony flagship, it punched through their energy shields like they were made of paper. The rod tore through the alien ship from bow to stern, causing massive explosions along its length. Vexcrow was thrown to the deck as his flagship shuddered and sparked. "What was that?" he shouted. "How did they penetrate our shields?" His weapons officer was staring at his instruments in shock. "Commander, they did not use energy weapons. They fired a solid projectile at incredible velocity. Our shields are designed to stop plasma and particle beams, not physical objects moving that fast. On dozens of other human ships, similar weapons were firing." The hegemony had never encountered kinetic weapons in space combat. Their shields, which could stop the most powerful energy attacks, were useless against solid metal moving at enormous speed. But the humans were just getting started. Captain Dong Hyeon-seo commanded the stealth frigate Shadow Walker. His ship was much smaller than the others, but it had special technology that made it nearly invisible to alien sensors. He had been waiting for this moment. "Take us in close," he ordered his crew. Right between those two cruisers, the Shadow Walker slipped through the hegemony formation like a ghost. The alien ships were so large and their sensors so focused on the main human fleet that they never noticed the small frigate moving among them. "Torpedo tubes loaded with fusion warheads," reported the weapons officer. "Fire all tubes," Seo commanded. 6 nuclear torpedoes launched from the Shadow Walker at point-blank range. They struck 2 hegemony cruisers before the aliens even knew the human ship was there. The nuclear explosions lit up space like tiny suns, destroying both enemy vessels completely. Throughout the battle, more human stealth ships were doing the same thing. They appeared from nowhere, struck hard, and vanished again before the enemy could respond. The hegemony had never faced invisible enemies before. Lieutenant Hai Won-young was leading a squadron of human fighters in a completely different kind of attack. Her 12 small ships were racing toward a group of hegemony destroyers, but they were not planning to engage in normal combat. "Remember the plan," she told her pilots over the radio. "Hit them fast and get out. We are not trying to win a fair fight." The human fighters were loaded with something the aliens had never seen before: swarm drones. Each fighter carried 50 small robotic attackers that could think and act on their own. "Release the swarms," Jung ordered. 600 tiny drones poured out from the fighters like angry insects. They were too small and fast for the hegemony weapons to target effectively. The drones swarmed over the alien destroyers, attaching themselves to weapon systems, engines, and sensor arrays. Then they exploded. The hegemony ships found themselves blind and helpless as the small explosions disabled their most important systems. They could not see, could not shoot, and could not run. They were sitting targets for the larger human weapons. Engineer Nam Soo-yoon was working frantically in the engine room of the cruiser Bison Pride. His job was to modify their weapons during the battle, adapting them to whatever the aliens threw at them. "Sir," called one of his technicians, "the enemy is using some kind of frequency weapon. It is trying to disrupt our electronics." Yoon nodded. He had expected this. "Switch all systems to backup frequencies." and prepare the electromagnetic pulse charges. The humans had learned that hegemony technology relied heavily on advanced computer systems. If you could disrupt those computers, you could cripple their ships. Yoon had spent weeks preparing special electromagnetic weapons designed to fry alien electronics. "Fire the pulse charges," he ordered. Invisible waves of electromagnetic energy spread out from the human ships. When they hit the hegemony vessels, lights went out and systems failed all across the alien fleet. Many of their ships found themselves drifting helplessly in space. Back on the hegemony flagship, Vexcral was beginning to understand that this battle was not going as planned. His fleet had lost over 300 ships in the first hour, while the humans had lost only 40. This was impossible. The humans were outnumbered 10 to 1. How are they doing this? He demanded. His tactical officer was studying the battle data with growing alarm. "Commander, they are not fighting like any species we have encountered before. They do not form battle lines. They do not try to match our firepower. Instead, they use speed, stealth, and weapons we have never seen. And they fight like they do not care if they die," added another officer. "Look at this data. Several human ships deliberately rammed our vessels when their weapons were destroyed. They sacrificed themselves to damage us." Vexcral stared at the tactical display. It was true. Human ships that were damaged or out of ammunition did not retreat. Instead, they turned themselves into guided missiles, ramming hegemony vessels at full speed. The explosions often took out ships much larger than themselves. "These humans are insane," he whispered. The battle continued for 6 more hours. The human fleet used every dirty trick they could think of. They fired missiles that looked like debris until they got close to enemy ships. They used fake surrender signals to lure hegemony vessels into traps. They even launched empty life pods filled with explosives. Most shocking of all was their refusal to retreat. Normal species would have fled when facing such overwhelming odds. But as the human fleet took casualties, the survivors fought even harder. They seemed to get more dangerous as their situation became more hopeless. When the battle finally ended, the human fleet had been reduced to 160 ships. But the hegemony had lost over 800 vessels. The alien survivors were in full retreat, racing away from the Vega system as fast as their damaged ships could carry them. Admiral Kim stood on his bridge, looking at the wreckage floating in space. Many good people had died today, but they had achieved something incredible. They had defeated a force 5 times larger than their own. "Sir," reported Commander Lee, "we are receiving transmissions from across the galaxy. Word of the battle is spreading. Every species in hegemony space is talking about what happened here." Kim nodded grimly. "Good, let them talk. Let them know that humans do not surrender, and we do not run away. Today was just the beginning." He turned to Captain Park. "Signal the fleet. We have work to do. The hegemony thinks this war will be over quickly. They are about to learn how wrong they are." In the depths of space, the surviving human ships began to move again. They had declared total war on the greatest empire in the galaxy, and they had just proven that they meant every word. News of the Battle of Vega spread across the galaxy like wildfire. In the great council chambers of 1,000 worlds, alien leaders gathered around holographic displays showing the impossible battle results. The humans had not only survived their first encounter with a hegemony fleet, they had won decisively. On the hegemony capital world of Dominion Prime, the High Council was in emergency session. The massive chamber was filled with representatives from dozens of conquered species, all serving their reptilian masters. But today, there was fear in their voices. Supreme Dominarch Kexvoth slammed his clawed fist on the crystal table. "How is this possible? No species has ever defeated a hegemony fleet of that size. These humans should be extinct by now." Fleet Commander Vex Kral stood before the council. his scaled hide still bearing scars from the battle. Supreme Leader, the humans do not fight like any species we have encountered. They use weapons and tactics we have never seen. Worse, they seem to welcome death in battle. Impossible, hissed another council member. All species fear death. It is the foundation of our empire. We rule through fear of extinction. Vexkral shook his head slowly. Not these humans. When their ships were damaged, they turned them into bombs. When their weapons failed, they rammed our vessels. They fought as if dying in battle was an honor rather than a failure. The council chamber fell silent. The hegemony had built their empire on a simple principle. They would arrive at a world with overwhelming force, demonstrate their power, and give the local species a choice: submit or be destroyed. Every species had chosen submission. Very well, Kexvoth declared finally. If the humans want to die so badly, we will accommodate them. Mobilize the Grand Fleet, 10,000 ships from every sector of the Empire. We will crush them with such force that no species will ever dare to resist us again. But while the hegemony was gathering their massive fleet, the humans were doing something completely unexpected. Instead of massing their own forces for a great battle, they were scattering across the galaxy in small groups. Admiral Sung Min Kang commanded the second human fleet from his flagship Incheon Thunder. His 50 ships were deep in hegemony space, far from any human colony. They had been traveling for weeks through the network of hyperspace routes that connected the galaxy. Target acquired, reported his navigation officer. Hegemony supply. Depot at Kepler Station. Minimal defenses, mostly cargo ships. Kang studied the tactical display. The space station was huge, a vital supply hub that fed raw materials to dozens of hegemony worlds. It was defended by only 20 warships, apparently considered too far from the front lines to need heavy protection. All ships, attack formation. Kang ordered. Remember, we are not here to capture the station. We are here to destroy it completely. The human ships struck like lightning. They disabled the defending fleet in minutes, then turned their weapons on the station itself. But instead of simply blowing it up, they did something that shocked the galaxy. They destroyed everything. The station, the cargo ships, the repair facilities, even the escape pods. When they were finished, there was nothing left but wreckage and debris. No survivors, no salvageable equipment, nothing that could be of any use to the hegemony. Similar attacks were happening all across the galaxy. Captain Yoonji Lim commanded a special operations team that had infiltrated the hegemony. World of Zarian 4. Her soldiers were not there to conquer the planet. They were there to teach the galaxy a new kind of warfare. Explosives placed on all 3 fusion reactors, reported Sergeant Dongmin Kim through his helmet radio. The power grid will be down for months. Good, Lim replied from her position, overlooking the spaceport. Team 2, what is your status? Spaceport control systems are offline, came the voice of Corporal Hyo Jin Lee. No ships will be able to land or take off for weeks. But the humans were not just destroying infrastructure. They were doing something far more dangerous to the hegemony. They were talking to the conquered species. Dr. Woo Jin Kim had been a xenobiologist before the war. Now he was something completely new, a psychological warfare specialist. His job was to understand alien minds and find ways to turn them against the hegemony. The Zulkari people have been enslaved for over 200 years, he explained to Captain Lim as they met in a hidden cave system. But they still remember their freedom. Their children are taught the old songs in secret. Can we trust them? Lim asked. They hate the hegemony more than they fear us, Dr. Kim replied. They have been waiting for someone, anyone, to show them that the Empire can be beaten. We just proved that it can. Across the galaxy, human teams were making contact with oppressed species. The Zulkari, who had been the first conquest of the expanding hegemony centuries ago. the Vorthek, whose planet had been strip-mined for rare metals, the Quillen, whose children were taken as slaves for hegemony worlds. All of them had one thing in common. They hated their conquerors and were willing to help anyone who could hurt the Empire. Commander In-Ho Jang led what the humans called the Ghost Fleet, 12 ships equipped with the most advanced stealth technology humanity could build. They could move through hegemony space completely undetected, appearing only when they chose to attack. New target acquired, his sensors officer reported. Hegemony troop transport heading to reinforce Altair 7, 15,000 soldiers on board. Jang studied the tactical display. The transport was heavily armed and escorted by 6 warships. A normal attack would be suicide. But the Ghost Fleet did not make normal attacks. Launch the shadow mines, he ordered. The mines were another human innovation. Small devices that could be deployed invisibly in the path of enemy ships. They would wait until the target was directly overhead, then detonate with enough force to crack a ship's hull. The hegemony transport never knew what hit it. The mines tore through its hull like paper, causing the ship to break apart in a series of explosions. 15,000 enemy soldiers that died without ever seeing their attackers. But the psychological impact was even greater than the military victory. Word spread quickly through the hegemony fleet that human ships could appear anywhere, anytime, without warning. No route was safe. No convoy was secure. On Dominion Prime, the reports were getting worse every day. Supreme Dominarch Kexvoth stared at the holographic display showing hegemony losses across the galaxy. Red marks indicated destroyed facilities, lost ships, and failed supply runs. They are everywhere, reported his intelligence chief. Small human fleets are attacking targets in 40 different sectors. We cannot defend everything. Then we ignore the small attacks, Kexvoth decided. The Grand Fleet will find their home worlds and destroy them. Once Earth is gone, these raiders will have nowhere to return to. But his advisors were looking. Worried. Supreme Leader, one of them said carefully. There are reports of uprisings on conquered worlds. Some of our subject species are openly rebelling. Kexvoth's eyes widened. Impossible. No species has rebelled against us for centuries. They know the consequences. The humans are encouraging them, the advisor continued. They are providing weapons and training. Worse, they are proving that the hegemony can be hurt. Our subject species are beginning to believe that we are not invincible. The Supreme Dominarch was beginning to understand that this was not like the wars they had fought before. Previous enemies had tried to match the hegemony's strength with their own fleets and armies. The humans were attacking the very foundation of the Empire itself. They were not trying to conquer hegemony worlds. They were trying to make it impossible for the hegemony to rule them. They destroyed supply lines, communications networks, and government facilities. They turned conquered species against their masters. They made the Empire too expensive to maintain. How many ships do we estimate the humans have left? Kexvoth asked. Unknown, Supreme Leader. They appear to be building new vessels faster than we can destroy them. And they are receiving help from rebel species who are providing materials and safe harbors. The Supreme Dominarch realized with growing horror that the humans had done something no enemy had ever accomplished. They had turned the Empire's own size against it. The bigger the hegemony was, the more targets the humans had to attack. The more worlds they ruled, the more places rebellion could spread. Continue gathering the Grand Fleet, he ordered finally. We will end this war with one decisive battle. Find their main force and crush it completely. But deep in human space, Admiral Kim was looking at reports from across the galaxy. Human raiders were striking everywhere. Rebellion was spreading to dozens of worlds. The hegemony was being forced to split their forces to defend against attacks. That could come from any direction. They still do not understand, he told his staff officers. They think this is a war between fleets. They think if they can defeat us in one big battle, they will win. Captain Park smiled grimly. They have never fought a species that turns war itself into a weapon. Every attack makes them weaker. Every day we survive makes more species believe they can be beaten. Kim nodded. The hegemony built their empire on fear. We are going to teach the galaxy that there is something stronger than fear, hope. Outside the ship, space was filled with the lights of human vessels preparing for the next phase of their campaign. They had declared total war on the greatest empire in galactic history. And they were winning. The Hegemony Grand Fleet was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. 10,000 warships from every corner of the Empire moved through hyperspace like a dark tide of metal and death. At its head flew the massive flagship, Eternal Dominion, carrying Supreme Dominarch Kexvoth himself. For 3 months, the Grand Fleet had been hunting the main human force. They had followed false leads and phantom signals across half the galaxy. Every time they thought they had cornered the humans, they found empty space or destroyed bases. The enemy seemed to vanish like smoke whenever the massive fleet approached, but now their long hunt was finally over. Target confirmed, reported Fleet Commander Vex Crow from his position at the tactical station. The human fleet is gathered at the Centauri system. All of their remaining forces appear to be protecting their first colony world. Kexvoth studied the holographic display with satisfaction. The Centauri system showed clearly on the screen, with the bright dot of Centauri Prime at its center. Around the planet, nearly 300 human ships waited in defensive formation. Finally, the Supreme Dominarch hissed. They have stopped running. They mean to make their last stand protecting their precious colony. It makes sense, agreed Vex Growl. Centauri Prime has great symbolic value for them. It was their first world beyond their home system. They will fight to the death to defend it. The Grand Fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Centauri system in perfect formation. 10,000 ships filled the void, their weapon systems charging with deadly light. It was a sight that should have terrified any enemy into immediate surrender. But the humans did not surrender. Instead, they sent a message. Fleet Admiral Boara Shin appeared on the communication screen. She was an older woman with steel-gray hair and eyes that had seen too much war. Behind her on the bridge of her flagship Sol Dynasty, officers worked calmly at their stations as if facing impossible odds was just another day at work. Supreme Dominarch, she said with a slight bow of her head. I am Fleet Admiral Shin of the Terran Federation. Welcome to Centauri space. Kexvoth leaned forward in his command chair. Admiral Shin, you are surrounded and outnumbered more than 30-1. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick. Shin smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. I appreciate the offer, Supreme Dominarch, but we must decline. You see, we have been preparing for your arrival for quite some time. Preparing? Kexvoth laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through his bridge. What preparation could possibly help you against this fleet? You will see, Shin replied calmly. But first, let me introduce you to some friends of ours. The communication screen split, showing dozens of new faces. They were not human. Kexvoth recognized species from across the galaxy. Zelkari, Vorthok, Quillen, and many others. All species that had been conquered by the hegemony centuries ago. These are the commanders of the Liberation Fleet, Shin explained. Representatives of 47 species that have decided they no longer wish to be part of your empire. One of the alien faces spoke up. It was a Zelkari female, her blue skin marked with the ritual scars of her people. I am War Leader Zara of the Free Zelkari Worlds. We have waited 300 years for this moment. Another voice joined in, this one from a massive Vorthok warrior. The children of Vorthok Prime remember the taste of freedom. Today we reclaim it. Kexvoth stared at the screen in growing horror. This is impossible. These species were completely pacified. They have no military capability. They do now, Shin said simply. For the past 4 months, while you have been chasing our raiders across the galaxy, we have been very busy. We have been building an alliance, sharing technology, and preparing for this day. As if responding to her words, new contacts began appearing on the hegemony sensors. Ships were dropping out of hyperspace all around the Centauri system. Not just human vessels, but alien designs from dozens of different species. Within minutes, over 2,000 additional ships had joined the human fleet. Rebellion fleets from 47 different worlds, reported the hegemony sensor officer in a shaking voice. They are surrounding us, Supreme Leader. But Kexvoth was not finished yet. Even with the rebel reinforcements, his grand fleet still outnumbered the enemy. All ships, attack formation. We will crush this rebellion here and now. The Grand Fleet began to move forward, but Admiral Shin was not done with her surprises. Captain O, she said to someone off-screen, please show our guests the welcome we have prepared for them. Captain Jae-Sung O commanded the massive defense platform orbiting Centauri Prime. For months, his engineers had been working around the clock to prepare for this moment. The platform looked like a normal space station, but appearances could be deceiving. Planetary defense grid coming online, O announced. All weapon systems charged and ready. What the hegemony had thought was a peaceful colony world suddenly revealed its true nature. Hidden launch bays opened all across the planet's surface. Weapons platforms that had been disguised as mining stations powered up their massive guns. The entire Centauri system had been turned into a fortress. Asteroid field weapons activate, came another voice over the communication channel. Throughout the system, what the hegemony had thought were normal asteroids began to move. Hidden bases that had been built inside the space rocks opened fire with weapons that could punch holes through the largest ships. The Grand Fleet found itself flying into the most elaborate trap in military history. But Admiral Shin was still not finished. All ships, she broadcast to the combined human and alien fleet, begin final protocol. On ships throughout the Allied fleet, volunteers were stepping forward for the most dangerous mission of their lives. These were crews whose vessels had been damaged in previous battles, or ships that were too old to be effective in normal combat. But the humans had found a way to make them deadly one last time. The damaged human cruiser Daegu Storm had lost most of its weapons in the Battle of Vega, but its engines still worked, and its hull was packed with every explosive device the crew could find. Captain Min Ho-yoon stood on his bridge with the 20 volunteers who had chosen to stay with him. Target acquired, reported his helmsman. Hegemony dreadnought crushing fist directly ahead. All hands prepare for impact, Yoon announced. Calmly, it has been an honor serving with you. The Daegu Storm accelerated to maximum speed, racing toward the enemy ship like a guided missile. The hegemony crew saw it coming and fired everything they had, but the human ship kept coming. When it struck the alien dreadnought, the explosion was visible from the other side of the system. All across the battlefield, human ships were making similar sacrifices. Vessels that could no longer fight effectively were being turned into weapons of last resort. Their crews volunteered willingly, knowing that their sacrifice could take out enemy ships many times larger than their own. The psychological impact on the hegemony fleet was devastating. They had never fought an enemy that used suicide attacks as a standard tactic. Worse, the humans seemed to consider dying for their cause an honor rather than a failure. Major Hyun Seo Kim was leading the ground defense of Centauri Prime itself. Her Marines had been preparing for months, turning the entire planet into a fortress. When hegemony landing craft began descending through the atmosphere, they found a very unpleasant surprise waiting for them. Enemy transports entering atmosphere, reported her communications officer. They are heading for the capital city. Let them come, Kim replied grimly. Activate the surface-to-space missile batteries. Hidden launch sites all across the planet opened fire simultaneously. Hundreds of missiles rose from the surface, targeting the incoming hegemony ships. But these were not normal missiles. They were equipped with the same kinetic warheads that had proven so effective against energy shields. The hegemony landing. Craft began exploding in the sky like deadly fireworks. Those that managed to reach the surface found the entire planet ready for war. Every building had been fortified. Every street had become a killing ground. The humans and their alien allies were prepared to fight for every meter of ground. But the real shock came when Supreme Dominarch Kexvoth received an urgent message from his home world. Supreme Leader, the panicked voice of his communications officer reported. We are receiving distress calls from Dominion Prime. The capital is under attack. What? Kexvoth roared. That is impossible. Our entire fleet is here. Sir, it appears to be a coordinated uprising. Rebel forces are attacking hegemony worlds throughout the Empire. They are broadcasting a message claiming that the liberation of the galaxy has begun. Admiral Shin's image appeared on the screen again. But now she was smiling broadly. Did you really think we would put all our forces in one system, Supreme Dominarch? While you have been gathering your grand fleet here, our allies have been preparing uprisings on every world you rule. The tactical display showed the true scope of the disaster. Red warning lights were appearing all across the galaxy as rebel forces attacked hegemony installations. Entire sectors were going dark as communication networks were destroyed. The Empire was collapsing from within. This was all planned, Kexvoth whispered in horror. You used Centauri as bait to draw our entire fleet away from our territory. Now you are beginning to understand, Shin replied. This is not just a battle between fleets, Supreme Dominarch. This is a revolution, and it has already begun. The Battle of Centauri continued to rage, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. The hegemony Grand Fleet was trapped in a system-wide killing ground, far from home, while their empire burned behind them. The humans had not just declared total war on the hegemony. They had declared total war on the very concept of galactic tyranny. And they were winning. 6 months after the Battle of Centauri, the galaxy was a very different place. The once mighty galactic hegemony existed only in history books. Their fleets were destroyed, their worlds liberated, and their leaders either dead or in hiding. The empire that had ruled 40,000 worlds for 1,000 years had collapsed in less than a year. President Mi-Young Lee stood at the podium in the great assembly hall on Earth. Before her sat representatives from over 300 species, including many who had been enslaved by the hegemony for centuries. Today was the day they would sign the Treaty of Terra and establish a new order among the stars. Friends and allies, President Lee began, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. We gather today not as conquerors and conquered, but as equals who have chosen freedom over slavery, cooperation over domination. In the front row, Admiral Tae-ho Kim sat with the other military leaders who had made this moment possible. His hair was completely white now, and new scars marked his weathered face. The war had aged him greatly, but his eyes still held the fierce determination that had carried humanity through its darkest hour. Beside him sat Fleet Admiral Boara Shin, the architect of the Centauri victory. Her tactical genius had not only trapped the hegemony Grand Fleet, but coordinated the galaxy-wide uprising that brought down the Empire. She would be remembered as one of the greatest military minds in galactic history. The Treaty of Terra establishes 3 fundamental principles, President Lee continued. First, no species may be enslaved or forced to serve another. Second, all species have the right to govern themselves according to their own customs and beliefs. Third, disputes between worlds will be resolved through negotiation and law, not through force of arms. War leader Zara of the Zelkari stood to address the assembly. Her blue skin bore fresh scars from the liberation of her home world, but her voice was strong with hope. For 300 years, my people dreamed of this day. The humans did not. Just free us from our chains. They taught us that freedom is something worth dying for. The massive Vorthic representative, General Throck, nodded his agreement. His species had provided much of the heavy labor for hegemony mining operations, but they had proven to be fierce warriors when given the chance to fight for their liberty. The Vorthic will never forget the debt we owe to humanity. When others said rebellion was impossible, the humans showed us it was inevitable. But not everyone in the galaxy was celebrating. In a hidden base in the Outer Rim, the surviving leaders of the hegemony were planning their revenge. Supreme Dominarch Kexvoth had escaped the destruction of his grand fleet and now commanded the scattered remnants of his forces. This is not over, he snarled at his remaining officers. The humans may have won this battle, but they cannot watch every world in the galaxy. We will rebuild, we will return, and we will make them pay for what they have done. Fleet Commander Vexkral, one of the few senior officers to survive the war, looked doubtful. Supreme Leader, our forces are broken. Most of our species have joined the rebellion. We have perhaps 50 ships left from a fleet of 10,000. Then we will use those 50 ships to cause as much damage as possible, Kexvoth replied. We will target human colonies, destroy their trade routes, make them regret the day they defied us. But their conversation was being monitored. In space not far from their hidden base, Commander Inho Jang waited aboard his stealth ship. The Ghost Fleet had survived the war and now served a new purpose. They were the guardians who watched for any sign that the old tyranny might return. Target confirmed, Jang reported to his crew. Last known hegemony command base. 50 ships, mostly damaged. Permission to engage? The response came quickly from Admiral Kim aboard his flagship. Permission granted. Show them that the galaxy has changed forever. The attack was swift and decisive. The Ghost Fleet struck without warning, appearing among the hegemony remnants like deadly phantoms. Within an hour, the last organized resistance to the new galactic order was destroyed. Kexvoth died as he had lived, trying to impose his will on others through force. Back on Earth, the treaty signing continued with speeches from representatives of dozens of worlds. Each had their own story of liberation, their own reasons for gratitude to the species that had shown them freedom was possible. Ambassador Kyung-Soo Han, who had delivered humanity's original declaration of war, now had a very different message to deliver. The Terran Federation pledges to defend the independence of all free worlds. We will not seek to rule you, but we will stand with you against any who would. The signing ceremony lasted for hours as each species formally joined the new Galactic Federation. Unlike the old hegemony, this alliance was based on voluntary cooperation rather than forced submission. Each member world retained its sovereignty, while agreeing to mutual defense and peaceful trade. But the most important moment came when the treaty was presented to humanity itself. President Lee signed on behalf of Earth and its colonies, but she also signed something else. A document that surprised many in the assembly. The Terran Federation hereby renounces any claim to special status within the Galactic Federation, she announced. We will have one vote, the same as every other member world. We did not fight this war to replace one empire with another. The alien delegates were stunned. In galactic history, the winner of such a massive war always claimed the right to rule. But humanity was voluntarily giving up the chance to become the dominant power in the galaxy. Later that evening, Admiral Kim stood on the observation deck of his flagship, looking out at the diverse fleet that now protected Earth. Ships from dozens of species flew in formation, their different designs creating a beautiful tapestry against the stars. General Siwoo Park joined him at the viewing window. Park had led the peacekeeping forces that helped restore order to the liberated worlds. His job had been to ensure that freedom did not collapse into chaos. Do you think it will last? Park asked quietly. This peace we have built? Kim considered the question carefully. Nothing lasts forever, my friend. But we have given the galaxy something it never had before. The knowledge that tyrants can be defeated, that empires can fall, that even the smallest species can fight for their freedom and win. And if new threats arise? Kim smiled, the same grim expression he had worn when facing the hegemony fleet so many months ago. Then we will deal with them the same way we dealt with the last ones. Humans do not surrender, and we do not forget our friends. On the bridge of his ship, Captain Dong Hyun Seo was reviewing the latest intelligence reports. His stealth frigate was part of a new early warning network that watched the galaxy's borders for signs of external threats. The liberation of hegemony space had been noticed by powers beyond the galaxy's rim. Sir, reported his sensors officer, we are detecting unusual energy signatures from the Andromeda vector. It looks like ships, but the designs are completely unknown. Seo nodded grimly. The galaxy had been freed from one set of tyrants, but the universe was vast and full of dangers. Somewhere out there, new enemies might be watching and planning. Continue monitoring, he ordered. And prepare a full report for Admiral Kim. If something is coming, we need to be ready. The communication came through moments later. Admiral. Kim's weathered face appeared on the screen, looking as determined as ever despite his age. Captain Seo, I need you to investigate those contacts personally. Take your ship to the edge of our space and find out what we are dealing with. Understood, Admiral, Seo replied. And if it turns out to be hostile? Kim's smile was sharp as a blade. Then we remind the universe that humanity does not kneel to anyone. We declared total war against the hegemony and won. If new enemies want to test us, they will learn the same lesson. As the stealth frigate turned toward the unknown contacts, its crew prepared for whatever might come. They were part of something larger now, protectors of a free galaxy where species chose their own destiny. The war against the hegemony was over, but humanity's watch had just begun. Somewhere in the darkness between the stars, new challenges waited. And when they came, the galaxy would be ready. The humans had proven that even the mightiest empire could fall if people were willing to fight for their freedom. That lesson would echo through the cosmos for generations to come. A reminder that tyranny might triumph for a time, but it could never triumph forever. The stars belonged to all who dared to reach for them.